Being a priest is a very strange thing. It's strange in so many ways. One of the strangest things, this is universal, when I'm out and about, not dressed like this. I meet some of you, for example, over at the West Side Market, and you'll bump into me and you're startled because you've never seen me dressed in normal clothes, though I'm mostly dressed in normal clothes. And I'll be out and about, and I'll be talking to people at a party or at a restaurant or at a bar or wherever, and eventually do. And I tell them I'm a priest. And almost invariably, very soon after that, there comes this question. It's sort of like they imagine that, there's one day, I'm sitting in my bathrobe having my coffee, and you get one of those like Amber Alert buzzes on your cell phone, and oh God, I'm getting the call, When did you get the call? And, it to do with that. And then I started turning it on people, because by the time that they find out what I do for a living, I probably already find out what they do for a living. And I'll say, well, let me ask you first, when did you get the call to be an electrical engineer? When did you get the call to be a CPA? And they look at me like I'm completely out of my mind. This business of call, this is such a strange business. And in a way, stories like the one we heard today of Jesus calling the fishermen to become fishers of people, it really doesn't help. Because people think that's the way it works. One day you're fishing and some guy walks up and says, "Follow me," and it's like, the heavens open and angels come down, and all of a sudden you feel strangely warmed, as John Wesley said, and you know that you've got to do this or do that. But that's really not how it happened for me or for anybody else I've ever met. I always say that vocation is just the thing that fits you best. And actually, the fact that I've been called to the priesthood, and I do believe I'm called to the in a very particular sort of way. And this fits me like nothing else does. I mean, there are other things I could have done, but nothing fits me like this. And I've always sort of known, I have always known that this was the thing I was supposed to do. So just as I would say to this random person sitting next to me at the bar, so when did you feel the call to become an electrical engineer? I guess I could say to all of you, and I mean this, every single one of you in this room, when did you feel in yourself the call to be the thing that is most truly who you are? And that's not necessarily your job, is it? I know people who have said, and I think this is quite common, I have always known that I'm supposed to be a mother. I've always known that I'm supposed to be a father. I've always known that I was meant to partner with someone. I've just always known it. I've always known in my heart of hearts that there was something in me whose destiny was to do this thing. Sometimes it's a job. Sometimes it's who you live with and how you live with them. Sometimes it's how you nurture people. Sometimes it can be a hobby. There could be some people who would say, all my life, I have felt this urge to collect butterflies. Now, who is to say that that's absolutely not their vocation in life? Because the truth is, in God's working out the plan of salvation in the world, every single human person has a place in that puzzle, the place where they fit. There are moments, of course, where things click, and you experience it in a new way. It's like the person who always felt called to be partnered with somebody, and then he's at this dinner party, and there she is, and all of a sudden he says, "That's it. That's what I've wanted all my life." Or the mother who, when the baby is handed to a person who finds just that coin that they've been looking for, that odd Yugoslavian coin to finish their collection, perfection. That is no less a call than my call to be a priest. No less. It is equally God saying to that person, this is what you are made for. And in the doing of this, my reign is advanced in the world, even if you can't see how. And oftentimes, we can't see how. We cannot know how the piece that we play, the part that we play, has any impact at all on the great unfolding of God's design. But it does. Now, just to take this in a slightly different direction before I walk away and let you go wake up after this. In my life, there have been times where I felt deeply called to things only to realize that I was really wrong. That the thing that I thought I was called to is actually destructive for me, unhelpful for me. And I think that's where the tradition comes into play and the community comes into play. By helping us always to look at the thing that we feel most drawn toward. Is this really of God, or is this of my own selfishness? I mean, there are times in my life, certainly, where I have felt called to murder someone. Violently. But the great tradition of the church and the community of believers says to me, that voice really is not the voice of God calling you forth. That is the voice of evil, and you better not do it, because we will not come to... And sometimes the tradition grows very... So here we have our sister Jennifer preparing to be ordained a priest, because she, like me, is very odd. 100 years ago, the church would have said to her, well, that's ridiculous. That cannot be God's will. God doesn't want women to be priests. But gradually, as the church struggles with these feelings that we have, something happens and the church says, maybe now it's time to go a different way. Maybe we were wrong. And so there has to be patience. 50 years ago, the church would never have ordained an openly gay person like me, would never have done it. In fact, they would have said to me, you should be ashamed of who you are. But gradually, as we struggle together with these calls that we feel inside of ourselves, like the call to partner with a person of the same sex, the church listens to us and gradually realizes what is good and what is evil. So sometimes this takes generations for the church to come to awareness. But the bottom line here, sisters and brothers, is this business of being called is not something that just happens to people who wear funny clothes in public. This call is something that happens to all of us as God pulls us in certain direction so that God's reign on earth might be fulfilled. I think one of the reasons this is hard for people to imagine is because people do not know truth. And that is, God reveals God's self to us in the most ordinary things. God does not generally flash lightnings at us. God does not send hail and lightning bolts or any of that. God speaks to us as we walk through our days in ways that are just ordinary. That's how God calls us. And in just a few minutes, we are going to stand together at this table, and we are going to pray in thanksgiving over bread and wine. And it is the belief of this church that in that bread and wine, Jesus actually gives himself to us. In ordinary bread and ordinary wine, the divine life, not just in our heads, but the divine life is actually given to us. If you can believe that, then you can also believe that in your life, your ordinary life, as ordinary as bread and wine, God is calling you to something. And if that's all you take away today from this Eucharistic table, that if Jesus can give you his very life in bread and wine, then Jesus can give you his very life in every ordinary thing that happens to you every day of your life.